The North Carolina State Board of Elections has dropped a plan that would have hurt election transparency. Dr. Andy Jackson reported on this recent development for the John Locke Foundation's blog, The Locker Room. Andy is director of the Civitas Center for Public Integrity. This has to do with election observers. What was it that the State Board of Elections originally wanted to do?
Well, what they wanted to do is change the election rules. So the General Assembly has to pass laws. They pass laws on elections, and based on those laws, the agencies, including the State Board of Elections, will formulate rules. And so traditionally, we had essentially had a rule where on Election Day you could have no more than 2 at a time in a local place, but then they can be rotated every 4 hours. What the State Board of Elections wanted to do was to reinterpret the law, so changing the rules. So instead of saying that you have a maximum of 2 at any given time every 4 hours, this would actually be a maximum of 2 precinct-specific observers per day, plus possibly in some areas an at-large observer.
And the reason for concern about this is that basically if a party wanted to have an observer at a poll site, they basically would have to get someone to commit to the entire day or else lose that observation?
Essentially. The folks that do election observations, unlike poll workers, election judges, precinct officials, early voting officials, they're not paid. It's a really boring job when things go well. You just sit there, you watch the people come in, you see everybody's checking in fine, you take notes. But on a good day, it's extremely boring. And so it's often hard to get, for party officials to get people to fill in that spot all day. So they have to rotate people in. And that's the way the law is written, and that's the way the original set of rules were written.
If this change had gone through, what would have been the impact for election transparency?
Well, it would have been diminished because you would simply have fewer observers to make sure everything is going on the up and up. And this is from both parties. It's not a Republican or Democratic thing. Libertarians, if they want to get in on the action, they can send observers as well. And so to move away from a system where you have a regular rotation of observers, by definition almost, makes the voting process less transparent.
But the good news, as we said at the outset, is that the Elections Board has backed down from this proposal. What happened?
Well, essentially, people got involved, got angry, or at least got informed, and let the State Board of Elections know. I sat in on a hearing, actually spoke at the hearing where a speaker after speaker rose up and spoke against this change, how it would lessen transparency, how it was going contrary to state law on this. I also reviewed some of the written comments that people had submitted almost universally in opposition to this, and the State Board of Elections got the message.
And so they have, at the State Board, they've rewritten their proposed rule to make it conform to what the law says?
Yes, there's been a rewrite of the rewrite. They've added some language, and it looks complicated. Essentially, they're saying they can only have, for the local observers, no more than 2 at a time per day. So it sounds a little complicated. They just didn't want to take their language out, so they added to it. I emailed the State Board of Elections, and they confirmed that under that language, it's going to stay with what we have now, which is on Election Day up to 8 observers per day, on a weekday early voting up to 6, on a weekend early voting, which is about 5 hours, up to 4 per day.
As this whole debate has moved forward, there was actually some legislation that could have led to even more observers. Is that right?
Maybe not more, but it would have solidified. Actually, I take that back. Yeah, perhaps up to 10. But the essential thing was they were signaling to the State Board of Elections that we're aware of what's going on, and if you try to get around our current law, we will just change the law to make sure that it gets back to that original, more open form.
Beyond the actual policy change that came about in this case, do you see some positive signs that once people found out what was going to happen and started making their voices heard, that the State Board of Elections was willing to react and didn't just rush this through?
Well, it's a positive thing. Now, I you give the State Board of Elections credit. They heard the folks that were complaining about this and made changes. But also, this is a part of a safeguard we have in North Carolina. They were also aware that even if they went ahead and pushed through with this, it would have to go next to the State Rules Review Commission. And last year they got shot down on one of their proposed rule changes. So they know if there's a lot of opposition, and if there's a lot of opposition based on the law, even if they pass it, even if they push it through, it probably won't get through that final step of the process.
If you'd like to learn more, there is a blog entry at the John Locke Foundation's Locker Room blog. It's headline, Elections Board Backs Down, Will Not Try to Limit Observers to 2 per Day. Its author is Dr. Andy Jackson, director of the Civitas Center for Public Integrity at the John Locke Foundation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.